This is the big interview and I'm Graham Hunter. I'm happy to have you with me. Today, my guest is Michael Bridges. We decided to approach Michael because he was one of those that, to the three of us, Martin, Neil and I, felt emblematic of the last time that Leeds were dramatic. I didn't know that was going to rhyme before I started out in a sentence, but hey, that's the adventure of life, isn't it? What? Beyond that, though, the more we researched, the more we found out that Michael was quite the character, definitely bright, certainly articulate, opinionated, and one of the things that really stood out to us was that despite the fact that we were all, him especially, cruelly robbed of him at his most explosive because of that dreadful injury he suffered for Leeds at Besiktas, he nonetheless had a huge career in football and remained totally plugged in, enchufed, as we say in Spanish, to the Leeds scene. Anyway, that was enough to convince us we should ask him to join us. The alacrity with which he said yes was also encouraging. So, you'll hear us talking about why Chris Waddle left a young and bemulleted Michael. I don't know if bemulleted Michael in tears for 2 weeks is a good way to say it. He was Michael, he had a mullet haircut, and he cried for 2 weeks. You want to know why? I haven't put you off. Okay, listen on. We'll also tell you how his remarkable father, somebody who I wish I'd known well, Joe, a lifelong Newcastle fan, reacted to his son signing for Sunderland. However, Leeds fans, as I promised, you know you got the best of Michael, and he's now back at that club as an ambassador. So his story, the goals, the laughter, the drama, the footballing tragedy, genuinely tragedy, it's all here. You're going to hear what it's like to play against some of the toughest centre-backs of the 90s. We'll also explain how two of the greatest, asterisk, most evil, dressing room revenge pranks of all time went down. And Mr. Bridges, who's now an analyst on Premier League broadcasts and Champions League broadcasts with Optus in Australia, which is where he ended his playing career and still lives, how Michael breaks down what he loves about the new Leeds, the promoted Leeds, or should we just say Bielsa's Leeds. May I introduce the fascinating and funny Michael Bridges. It's the big interview, and this time it's a double first. It's something I never achieved in my educational career. We're beaming straight to Australia across the internet, and it's our first Leeds player for a long time. Played for many other clubs, but we're focusing on Mr. Michael Bridges. Welcome, g'day, etc. Further cliches of international language.
Well, good eye, and thank you very much for having me on. Really looking forward to it, Graham. It's been, like you say, when I got the message to take part and be interviewed, I couldn't jump at the chance quick enough, especially with what's going on at Leeds United bouncing back into the Premier League. It's been an incredible journey. Having been a player there and seeing what they've been through and seeing the highs and the lows, but to see them bounce back and be involved with the club again as an ambassador, it's been absolutely brilliant. So looking forward to what you've got to say.
I tell you what, Michael, I'm as well as looking curious, I'm a very curious person. Well, you're a bit of a mixed up kid. Rumour has it, okay, so I might be wrong, mullet, Spurs supporting, Newcastle born man who ends up Mackham, and the kids used to call around and ask your dad to come out and play. Now, that's a big first question. Is all of it true?
Now, you've done your research. I don't know who you spoke to, but every word is true, and you're right, I'm very mixed up. And it goes back, I used to go up to St James's Park with my dad. He was black and white daft, and I used to go up there, St James's Park. I'll never forget sitting there, cup of Bovril and a pie. That was my night. My dad would have his beer.
For those who haven't been there, describe how you get to from the centre of Newcastle up to St James's Park. For those who haven't had the privilege of doing that sort of pilgrimage, particularly seeing as you're a wee man with your dad, what stuck in your head about the getting there and what it was like?
Well, it's the whole build-up. It wasn't actually the football game itself. It was the build-up, getting from the house in Whitley Bay to the train station, getting on the train with my father and a few of his friends and his mates on the way up to the game, all talking about the match and what it was going to entail. And then you get the train up to St James's Park, you go up the escalators to the top, and as you come out of the metro station, you can just see St James's Park up on top of the hill, and you just do that climb and the walk up, and you hear the chants starting. And I think that's what I experienced at St James's Park as a young kid. And I think that's everybody's memories on a match day, that they will have their own story about what it is, and you'd get the goosebumps. And I just used to look forward to getting in there to see my heroes. And one of them was Chrissy Waddle. And absolutely adored that man. I loved the way he entertained and he played the game. And yes, I did have a mullet. I grew my bloody hair at the back like his hair. I tried to even have a little limp. Waddle had a bit of a stagger and a limp when he walked or he ran, and like a drop shoulder. I even tried to imitate what he was about. Now, bearing in mind, I'm 8 years of age, and shirts weren't ready available then. You could get them from your area. So what had happened anyway, long story short, Chrissy Waddle left. He went to Tottenham Hotspur. I think I cried my eyes out for about 2 weeks. And I'm not kidding. I said, my dad, I'm not going back. I don't want to go to the game. And he said, what about the Bovril? That'll get you there. I said, not even the Bovril will get us there. So he worked in the Met Police many years ago in London. And he had some contacts down there. He was a police officer in Newcastle when he moved up. And the next thing you know, a Tottenham shirt was delivered. And he came into the room one day and he said, there you go. You can support Chris Waddle and Tottenham Hotspur. And the rest is history.
So he just to buck you up, he made sure he got a Spurs shirt from down there, and he gave you his blessing to go to the wrong side, to Spurs down south.
I wouldn't say the wrong side. We win trophies every year. Not.
Well, before we flip back again, you just said we.
Well, I'm still a Spurs fan.
That fascinates me. I genuinely, because one of the things that both for professional footballers and for a lot of journalists, when you see the difficult side of the profession, I haven't lost my love for Aberdeen. It just like, it courses through me. I still sell my soul to 11 people who are there for wages only every week. And I'm gone for life. But when you said we, given all that you've experienced and the fact that Spurs is a rough ride, I liked hearing that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Graham, you won't like hearing my story later on when I could have signed for Tottenham Hotspur then, and Alan Sugar shattered my childhood dreams. So that's a good one we'll get into a bit later on.
Listen, the last time that we had an interview guest, that had so many fantastic strips. We were sitting in Chris Waddle's loft. When we were up there, he had all his music, he had little statues of Laurel and Hardy, and he had strips as well. So when you got that strip from your dad, a Spurs strip, was that when this love of like that strips mean something, that they're aesthetically important to you, began?
I think it was even before that. I from the age of 5 or 6, it was a novelty. I wasn't from an affluent family. We were from Whitley Bay. Mum was a nurse, dad was a police officer, trying to, always only child, trying to support us as best they could. And I couldn't play ice hockey. I loved ice hockey, but I couldn't afford the equipment that came with it. So I took up street hockey. Because it was obviously there was just a pair of rollerblades and a stick. You didn't need all the padding and things. But the football strip every Christmas I always wanted or asked for off Santa Claus was a football jersey, and it would go from the Liverpool, the candy one, it was the silver one that used to have the stripes at one end. John Barnes was famous for wearing that one. I love my Spurs shirts, and I think one year I actually got a beautiful French jersey. So don't ask where the hell my old man got it. It was probably a Fugazi for all right reasons, Platini was spelt wrong on the back of it, but it was just great memories. And every year, me and the lads on Christmas Day in my street would run to the cul-de-sac on Christmas Day after we'd had breakfast and opened the presents, and we're all just checking each other's football jerseys out to see who wanted to be what player. So just great memories, and that's where the love affair started with jerseys. And what surprised me later on in life in football, I collect jerseys. I've got, Frank de Boer's Barcelona jersey, Costa Curta's AC Milan jersey, Aldair's Roma, and I've just collected them as many times as I can over the years when I swap shirts. And, it was interesting to see not many of the lads did that, which I was very surprised at. Now, I've got memories from their matches and things, and I think some of the lads probably regret it back then when they never used to swap jerseys.
I look around now and I see that it becomes a thing in big matches. Not only should we swap, but who's asked me first, where should we do it? There's a big controversy now about never swap on the pitch, only inside. A lot of players keep a second strip so that they keep their own and swap the spare strip. There's a big industry in that. I've been in Chappie Ferrer's house and he's got a wardrobe full of them that he takes out on rollers and shows you. And they're, for some footballers, the game's so brutal that peripheral details don't matter. And for others, it's a living, breathing memory of every effort you've put in, every time you've come up against a top opponent. And clearly with the love and detail you've put into those behind you, as well as just being strips, they mean something to you from your life.
Oh, that was shadow of a doubt. The best one, the good story about the AC Milan jersey, it was the night when we knocked AC Milan out at home. Lee Bowyer scored a late goal. It went through Dida's hands. So I'm playing up against Maldini and Costa Curta. And I'm looking at the scoreboard. And Costa Curta's marked me all game. And because that's how it panned out. So I thought, I don't really fancy Costa Curta's shirt. So the last few minutes, I've gone and stood next to Maldini because I know the referee's going to blow the whistle and I want Maldini's shirt. So as soon as I turned, the referee's blowing his whistle, I've gone, Maldini, swap shirt. And he said, oh, sorry, Kewell. And I thought, he's done us again, Harry's done us. So I saw Shevchenko and I ran up to shake hands with the players and I went to Shevchenko, swap shirt. And he went, no, sorry, Radebe. So lo and behold, I've gone back. Costa Curta's shirt's up for grabs. So I'll never forget. I'd never seen, AC Milan actually did a lap around Elland Road to clap our fans as well, which I hadn't seen before. And I wish I'd never seen it because as we were coming off a young team in Leeds, we were all showing each other the jerseys that we had. Harry's got Maldini's and we're clapping our fans. And MacPhail had another good one as well. I can't think who he has. And I just turned around to say to the lads, I've got Costa Curta's. And at that moment, I witnessed Costa Curta open my shirt up and look at the back of it. And he went, stuff that. And he threw it in the Leeds end. And I'll never forget, I was absolutely mortified. And the best thing about it, I found it via Twitter last year when I was having a chat on the story at a function that I was doing in the UK. And the guy said, I know the person that grabbed your jersey. And he got in touch with me on Twitter. So it was absolutely hilarious.
Without telling you that this is stone cold fact, can I give you an alternative version of that? You know that Costa Curta's nickname is Billy. He's called Billy Costa Curta. And that's because of his absolute obsession with English football. So, as much as you were obsessed with Chris Waddle or whatever, Costa Curta grew up thinking that English football, how they defend, the traditions of English football were just like this. And he would always go on about it. So, his nickname, just universally, is Billy Costa Curta. I'm telling you that rather than him turning around and going, Bridges, who cares, who's he? I think what he's just done is paid testimony to what he thinks his British fan culture give to the noisy Leeds fans one of their own jerseys. So unless you've got a postcard from him saying, don't ever swap shirts with me again, I never want to see your name, then I'm telling you, he was actually honouring you with what he did. I'm willing to bet on that, Michael.
I'm taking that. That makes me feel a hell of a lot better.
I can't go to Leeds before we make one more comparison, because when we were in that last loft with the shirts that were comparable to that, you talked about Chris's little shoulder shuffle and his limp and whatever. Chris told us that he played to, I don't know, nearly 50 or whatever in amateur football, and he would play with teams that were trying to do him all the time in the Sheffield leagues. And one day he was playing against a kid who was trying his best to get close to him, and the centre-half was absolutely larricking the young full-back who wasn't getting near him. And Chris, did him time and time again because he's competitive. But by the end of the match, said to the youngster, never mind that, I did that to Maldini at Wembley. And that was Chris's message, that if I can do it to Maldini, I can do it to anybody. I suppose that attitude, those skills, what he did to Maldini against Italy at Wembley, is why a young footballer would fall in love with him, because he seemed to be able to do impossible things with his frame. Never mind the tricks, the balance.
He just looked so unorthodox, and it didn't look like when he was on the ball he could do anything, and then when he dropped that shoulder and he went, it was just excitement. You never knew, and that's what got me. I just love entertainers, and that's probably one of the things that I admired from people like him and Peter Beardsley that I watched up at St James's Park. It was the guys that captured my imagination. I went, wow, what did they just do? And I tried to take that into my footballing career. And, you know, sometimes it pays dividends when you're doing it in the final third, but when you're doing it in your own penalty area and you've got Peter Reid calling you everything under the sun, ready to rip your head off because you've tried to do a Cruyff in your own box. I learned the hard way, but I learned very quickly you don't do that in your own area.
Peter's a good teacher. Before we go to Elland Road, I have to ask, because, you know, your dad has figured so largely in the reason that, you know, you're here after a good career, because I think he was a decent footballer too. How long did it take to make the peace once you got signed for them?
Well, I'll tell you this story. I got in by fluke or crook. It was third time lucky for myself. I got released at Newcastle School of Excellence when I was 13. And it really upset us. John Carver and the Newcastle youth team had said, listen, we don't think you're good enough. You need to move on and get back to school and have another crack later at a later date. That really hurt us, but it gave us the incentive. My father said, you know, you've got to use this and try and prove that man wrong, or the club wrong, and, you know, don't let it upset you and put you off. So I had another go at Middlesbrough for a trial in Middlesbrough when they were training up in Newcastle. They used to have a training centre up there twice a week, and got an opportunity there, but never really got to play a game. And again, it was the same story. I'd been released, so I was devastated. And I was one of the youngest at school in my year, and it was actually my 5th of August birthday that saved my footballing career, and being in the right time at the right place at the right time. So a scout called Jack Hickson, who spotted Alan Shearer, actually came along to watch our school game. So I stayed on at sixth form college to become a sports teacher. wanted to do that. We were studying to be a sports teacher. We had a cracking football team at Monkseaton High School. So the lads all made a pact to stay together to win the All England Cup for the schools. When a lot of lads had gone off to go to YTS and scholarships from other clubs, we thought we've got a real chance here this year. So anyway, lo and behold, they came to watch another striker of mine, Simon Foster, who was a North East goal-scoring machine. He was injured. The scout was there to watch him. I played up front and I scored 5 goals in the game. And the scout, Jack Hickson, was stood next to my dad and actually asked, who's the number 10? And my dad said, oh, that's a kid called Bridges. He didn't tell him it was his son. He just said Bridges, and he said, "Oh, right." He said, "I'm here to watch Simon Foster." So my dad, being smart as a dart, said, "Oh, he's shite." He said, "Bridges is much better than him." So my dad helped us get an opportunity to be scouted over there, but he never asked the scout where he was from, and it backfired on my dad because Jack was scouting for Sunderland. So when I answered the phone at the house and it was Jack, and he said, "Michael, we'd like to offer you an opportunity to come and train as a 2-week work experience." I'm jumping at the chance. I said, where have I got to go? He said, "Well, your dad just needs to drive you through the Tyne Tunnel, under the river, and through to Sunderland." And I just went, "Oh my God, I've got to go in the kitchen and tell my dad now." So the funniest thing ever, I'll never forget walking into that kitchen. My mum and dad are really, waiting in anticipation to see where it's going to be. And I actually sneezed and muttered, "Sunderland." Dad said, "I'm going to have to break your legs. I can't allow this to happen." So there you go. It was incredible, and I didn't think I would have any issues. He didn't give us any issues. He was absolutely delighted, but it was that moment of shock horror, to think that he's got to tell all his mates that I'm going on trial to Sunderland, which he wouldn't even let one of my mates over the door who wore a Sunderland shirt, who lived down the corner, my best mate Gary Harden. He used to make him stand at the threshold and wouldn't let him come in. So it was quite ironic. But bless him, 4 years ago he passed away. So he's a proud man. He's a proud man. I lost my mentor, Graham. I lost him. Mate, this guy used to drive me up to Berwick 2 hours when I got a trial there with Warren Hawke. He'd drive me 2 hours up to Berwick to watch me get beat 15-0 by Celtic and Rangers, to drive all the way back to Whitley Bay, and it took him 6 drives, and he said, I'm never taking you back there ever again, son. Enough is enough.
What a man. Hats off. And I'm jumping the Sunderland bit. Maybe we come back to Sunderland, but you do so well there in a kind of rotating 4-man front line, which is Dicchio and you. And it's Big Niall Quinn and Kev Phillips, also a guest on this podcast, a fantastic guest, interesting man, clever striker. But you do so well, but you're also so eager to be a starter in the Premier League. It's still in all its leads. I understand the attraction of going there, but can you go back in your mind and just sum up that first week or two as you learn the rituals, as people try to din into you what is Leeds, and what are the things that you begin to notice about being a Leeds player in that first couple of weeks?
The first thing I had to get into my mentality, the fact that I had to feel that I belonged there, because I couldn't believe that I was going to a Premier League club that I'd been watching the season before with the quality that they had at their disposal, because I was with Sunderland youth team, I was with the reserves. I could never beat, when we were at Sunderland, we never beat that Leeds United youth team that had Woodgate, Ian Hart, MacPhail, Smith, Kewell, Robinson, the goalkeeper. It was incredible to think that I was going there and they'd put that much money and belief into me, because when I got there, I didn't believe I was good enough to be there. That was the thing I had to try and get mentally strong. And what I did realise early on is that I wasn't fit enough to be in this team, because I'd been shying away from Sunderland's pre-season. I'd missed out. And Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank had just signed for Atletico Madrid the day before. And O'Leary came up, he said, you better learn to swim quickly and you better get fit quickly. It's going to be a tough pre-season for you. If you're up for the challenge, we're going to go a long way. And it was... I was never going to batter an eyelid. Everything they threw at me with a guy called Ed Baranowski, who was the fitness coach, it was 2-3 sessions a day. I was doing the extras because I wanted to get to the level of these players, basically. And it was a massive reality check, I've got to be honest with you. There was a lot of things that the training ground facilities were superb. The players that I played with, what I seem to do is develop so quickly playing against people like Woodgate and Radebe, because I'm not saying no disrespect to when I was training with Sunderland, these guys were on a different level. In my game, I had to lift my game all round. I had to lift my beliefs. And it was all down to the players that were around me that my game came on so quickly and advanced, and the work and effort that I had to put in to get there as well. That's what I look back on.
I'm stunned. It's a brilliant answer, because, one of the things that Neil and Martin and I all thought is that we remember early games and an early interview where not only do you come across as very articulate, very, very friendly, I'd say charming for a boy that age, you gave, in public at least, no indication whatsoever that there could have been any doubts in your mind. And even at an amateur level, the professional game listens to this podcast too, but if you play against a set of lads who always beat you, I can understand that not being sure if you're going to fit in isn't just personal doubt. You know that you're playing with guys who've turned you over. But that's quite an interesting little psychological flip. The physical effort of working hard under Ed 3 times a day costs, but you can give that more easily than working on the do I belong thing. That's a big jump.
Graham, you know what the final decider was? I ended up moving into a house next door to Harry Kewell. We became very, very close mates on and off the field. I think that showed in that first season with all the goals I scored. Harry played a part, and the goals that he scored, I'd played a part. We just connected so well on and off the field. And he was like the brother that I'd never had. And the other side of that was the Derby game, first game, Derby at home. It's 0-0. I've had a shocker. It plays mind games on you. The press, there was no good press write-ups. But the following, I felt so much more relaxed the following game down at Southampton. And the ball came to us on the edge of the box, and I just looped one in to the top right-hand corner from a free kick, which I shouldn't have been anywhere near. Anyway, it just fell to me, and I managed to pull off some little lob over the goalkeeper. And
it was a Letitia goal, because the way in which you take it, there's no space, and your control flips it up, and the defender's on you, and you still loop it up and into the far corner. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous goal.
And it was that moment when I realised David Batty came and he jumped on top of me and he went, "You've arrived, young man, now back yourself." And that for me, getting a senior player of his when I used to watch him playing for England and what he was all about, Batty was the unsung hero. That was huge for me. And then I went on to get a hat-trick that game, and I just felt the shackles come off. And it was that moment when I felt like I actually belonged there, and that's when my mindset completely changed. After all the hard work had paid off.
Pick out then a couple of characters to try and... What we hope to do in this series genuinely is tell stories about football culture and football people. And we see the games, we get interviews. But, for example, if you were to pick out one or two in that setup, not necessarily a team, I would have instantly asked you about the chief, maybe about Lucas Radebe, who seemed to me to be, irrespective of what had gone on in his life, he was kind of a spiritual leader for just about everybody, because the fans worshipped him. O'Leary, who's not short of a little bit of self-regard, and he's quite a confident fella, to use a euphemism. He just spoke about him with reverence. I wonder what it was like. Tell us about why it was difficult to train against him. Tell us what it was like to be in a dressing room and work with him.
What Lucas was, it was very tough because he was good friends with David O'Leary. They were teammates and roommates. So the moment when Lucas was given the armband, before I'd even got there, I think O'Leary had said to Lucas, I'm going to want you to be captain, chief. You're getting the armband, but you don't call me. He used to call him Paddy. Lucas used to call O'Leary Paddy, you see. But he said, "You don't call me Paddy anymore." He said, "Now it's Gaffer." And Lucas found that very, very hard. So that was their relationship. You've got to distance yourself from that. But Lucas wore the armband. And like I say, when I got there, he embraced me. He said, "Welcome to the club. If there's anything you need, I'm here. I'm going to be the mentor for you." And it was tough because culturally he's come from a different culture altogether. And we had a very, very, what I found out early doors is that you've got people like Gary Kelly that are the ones that are the entertainers that organise the get-togethers. He was a catalyst for that. And Lucas never batted an eyelid to get himself involved in that culture, but there was rules and regulations, but it was one in, all in. We never had cliques, and that's one thing that I remember about Lucas. Now, what he did in training, I've played against a lot of defenders that take it easy in training. They're waiting for the match day, waiting Saturday comes. I'll tell you what, Lucas never did. He trained the way he played. And that's one thing I took a massive, I took a big leaf out of his book to say, he's focused every single day. He gets himself prepared for training and he doesn't switch off until that training session's over. Yes, he was a character. He was bubbly. He played with a smile on his face, which I love. But because he played the game so hard in training, I had to up my game as well. So he played a massive part for me.
My take on it, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were a player who was never shy of the ball being pinged into him because your touch was good. But you always wanted to... I felt like you used space really well, found space really well, because you never really wanted to go onto your left. So when you're training against Radebe, who I think was quite good he was quick over short bursts and physical, without being a brute, without being like Aldair, he would show you the way he wanted you to go. And if you gave him an inch, he would be through you. How did you learn... Playing against him, how did you alter in those first few months?
Well, I used to like to get the ball pinned into my feet and roll defenders, but I learned very quickly that when you do that to Lucas Radebe, you're going to get studs down the back of your calves and Achilles tendons. And I've still got his tattoo, or as I call it, his signature on the back of my calf when he would go through you in training. So the reason I get space so well, Graham, is because I didn't want to get kicked off Lucas, and I used to have to go drifting into other areas. That's it. So it was different. There was some players you could spin and turn. You couldn't spin Lucas. He would just kick you. He would he was a nightmare to play against. And the other thing that I learned from being there, I was a big fan of Dennis Bergkamp as well. I used to love watching Dennis and the way he could find space. And the interpretation that I use now, you might laugh at this, but when I'm coaching youngsters and that, I say, or players, I say, if you're a real estate agent, you want to buy the biggest plot of land you can. You've got to find the biggest bit of green grass. And I said, so if you can find yourself in that area with nobody else in there, you're going to find the ball. Do not let yourself get marked. And that was a big thing I learned from not wanting to get kicked from Lucas, but also watching the way Dennis played the game, because he was a master.
What was your vision of space in that case? Did you just drift into areas instinctively because it was innate, or did you then have to think, I'm going to study all my opponents and work out what they like to do and judge where to go based on that?
If we were playing as a 2, it would normally be Harry on the left-hand side, so you'd obviously get the left side stop or whatever. But if I was playing up front on my own and Harry was in behind as a 10, I would try and work, you'd have an idea of who you thought you would get more joy out of as a player. And you'd go up and play against them more often than not. And the other thing I used to do, I'd look for the numerical advantage. If I look around and scanned around, I realise that the ball's over one side of the field and there's enough bodies over there. I've got a lot more opportunity to get myself in one-on-one situations, or if Harry was drifting out further to the left, we could get a 2v1. So I was a smart player, and that came from Eddie Gray. Peter Reid turned me into a man. And he'd give us an opportunity. I was a young, skinny kid. What he drilled into me was he got the boyhood out of me, and he made us a tough player, because I was, sometimes you could brush me off the ball. When I got to Leeds, the education from Eddie Gray that I got in an attacking sense was phenomenal.
As a Scot, I want to be selfish here, go off the menu and say please continue about Eddie, because when I was growing up, and I'm born in '63, so by the time Eddie was, I was going to say dominating English football, but certainly one of the leading. He was the next best thing to George Best in my eyes, probably before you were born. But again, like Chris Waddle, Eddie's wiry body, and he's a tough, good-humoured man, but the way he could show you one way, go the next, and do it 3 times in the space of 2 seconds until the defender's head was turned on backwards. But the knowledge that he could show and teach as well is really good news to me.
Oh, it was spot on. And you just think of the education lesson that Harry Kewell had. Yes, Harry was an amazing player. He played off the cuff. He could open doors. He could win games single-handedly. But I'll tell you what, when he got a mentor, somebody like Eddie Gray, who played in that position, and he would tell Harry, because Harry didn't like defending, but when he got the ball, you were kind of like, whoa, hang on a minute, what's going on? And Eddie used to work with Harry a hell of a lot, and I think he can take a lot of credit for the way he manufactured and developed Harry as a player, because there's similarities from when I've seen clips of Eddie Gray in Harry Kewell when he runs with the ball.
And the brother that you never had, being a single kid, is Harry Kewell, in your view, a little bit underestimated? During the lockdown time, I spoke at length to Rafa Benitez. We did a big Zoom, and he's very defensive about having started Harry Kewell in Istanbul. And because of the tactical choices, because of the way the midfield was, where Gerrard started the game, Hamann only came on afterwards, Harry felt like a little bit of a risk. And he's very defensive of it. And the thing he always says is Harry was a match winner. And I put him on there because if had Harry been in full form, he could. And I think that if Rafa is a little bit defensive about that choice, because it wasn't because of Harry Kewell that they went 3-0 down to Milan, I feel generally that either because of a relationship with the media or maybe because of the way that the Leeds bubble burst, my contention is Kewell was a better footballer, a more impactful member of the Premier League than people have subsequently given him credit for.
Oh, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, he was, when you look at his highlights reel, what he did in the Premier League with Leeds United and, at Liverpool as well, before he had his injuries and his setbacks, he's up there. There's things he did that it would just cease to amaze you in training. So I think the credit, he lost obviously a lot of respect with the Leeds public when he left. Sadly, when he went to Liverpool, but also signing for Galatasaray. But that kind of kick-started Harry's career once again because he had success out there. But it never really went down well with the Leeds fans due to, Kevin and Chris passing away in Istanbul in that sense. But like you say, I think Harry was protected by his agent, Bernie Mandic, at the time, and it made him, you had to get inside Harry's bubble and his circle of trust to understand how much of a nice guy he is and how actually clever he is. And I would never normally say that about H, but going into management, you're not just given an opportunity. You've got to study hard. You've got to wait for that opportunity to come. And he had a great crack when he was coaching, which I was delighted with. He was very, very let down by Notts County, and he's waited again to have another opportunity now. And and most people would go, "I've had enough," and that's not for me. He's focused. Well, I will give Harry credit. When he's got something on his mind, he'll go out and get it, and that's what I love about him, because he's a go-getter. He's not a thing. But back in the day with his agent, he was very, very protected, and I think he probably regrets that back in the day having that guy looking after him.
That's a fair comment, and it probably distracted people's attention to what was going on the pitch, and that's what this podcast exists for. We're all about the football, none of the controversies. But nonetheless, maybe I've introduced that subject badly. I think I know, but your fifth goal for Leeds involves a celebration where there's a little bit of eating going on and a tapping of the tummy. It's against Middlesbrough. Now, there's a specific reason for that, I think, given that you were already, it was only your fifth goal, but you were already apparently playing for your future at the club.
You've done your homework, lad. It was, you know what it is? The worst thing you can give a Premier League footballer who lives by himself and he's a single lad and he can't cook is a McDonald's gold card. Now, what the McDonald's gold card was allowed you to do was McDonald's was sponsoring the Premier League. I came into the dressing room one day, there was all these envelopes in all the boys' spots, and we're going, "Oh, what's this? We've got a letter to an invite to somebody's barbecue, somebody's party, somebody's getting married, And we've opened it up, and there was this gleaming gold McDonald's card. And I was thinking, what the hell is this? And the boys are going, "Christ, read it. Free food. We've got free food from McDonald's." Now, bearing in mind, the lads, we're on good money. We don't need free McDonald's. Do you know what I mean? And two, we're professional footballers. We don't need it for the waistline. But for a lad that's living by himself, mate, this was absolute gold dust for me. So I'll never forget, Lee Bowyer lived at the other end of the cul-de-sac as well. And Harry had his partner looking after him, Cherie. She would cook good meals for him. And me and Lee, we didn't have anything like that. So we would drive to McDonald's. Lee never put any weight on. We would drive to Macca's. We'd get the menu with chips, show the gold card, and we'd just drive back and we'd just pig out on Macca's. So this went on for a few weeks, and I got the calipers every Monday morning, and the body fat started going up. Now, when you've got skinny legs like me and your midriff gets bigger, there's something going on. So the Steve McGregor, I can't remember who the fitness coach was at the time, he just said, "Listen, you'll be having too many Maccas. I'm taking your gold card off you." So it was like when Chris Waddle left Newcastle. I cried my eyes out, man, when I lost me McDonald's gold card. I was devastated. So I get this call off Lee Boy this day. He said, "Bridgie, do you want to go for Macca's?" I said, "I can't, mate. I can't. If I'm seeing at Macca's, I'm going to get done." He said, I've got my gold card, it won't cost you. I'm like, that's not the point, mate. You don't get it. I'll probably get sacked. So anyway, he talked us round. He said, "Go on, I'll get you an extra plate of fries." So I thought, go on then. So we've gone there in his Porsche with registration Bowyer. So it's quite discreet. Nobody's going to see us. So lo and behold, O'Leary's driving the other way with a fitness coach, and the catcher's going along Hare Hills Road into the McDonald's drive-through. So I'm just about to tuck into a burger, and there's a toot of the horn, and sure enough, it's O'Leary and the fitness coach looking through the car window, and I'm just going, and I threw the burger in the back of Lee's car, and I was like trying to scratch my head, and they're like, I'll never forget, he said, "If you don't score this weekend," he said, "you're getting fined, and you're not playing for 3 or 4 weeks till you lose the weight." So Middlesbrough gets the ball, scuffs a shot, it bobbles over Mark Swartzer, it sent him the wrong way, and I just ran off and I thought, I've got to do the celebration. So I've gone and had the burger bite, and I've tucked and tapped the old tummy and give it. And the fans never knew what the hell it was for. Everybody wanted to know, and I just didn't want to tell them what was going on. And lo and behold, I came in the Monday morning, and guess what was back shining in my spot? The Macca's gold card. I was back.
It wasn't a scuff. It was beautiful. Far corner, right across him. He's about 6'17" when he's fully stretched, and it still found that corner. That was another thing that made us want to invite you on here, because some of the finishes you conjured up were so clever. There was a couple of times in that beautiful season, I'm sure many times afterwards too, where you finished high. You got in close, and you were so clever about lifting it. There was about 3 in the middle of that 21 goal season because we've just finished, and I know that people need to know that I think it's Optus you're working for. Is it the
Optus Sports? Yeah, they're the Premier League rights holders in Australia.
And Big Mark and Kelly Summers work with them in Europe. Fantastic people, both of them. And I know you'll have been working hard on the Champions League recently and watching. There's been a couple of finishes, not exclusively in the final, where Manuel Neuer's extended leg, the way that he gets it down there, and you're screaming at people, lift it, lift it, lift it. And Michael Bridges, you were a maestro at that. That if I go high, if I lift it up here, the defender or the keeper isn't going to get it. You were really good at that.
No, I appreciate that. There was one against Bradford I'll never forget, right? And I used to love scoring the ones from distance, because I would try the unorthodox or the novelty thing, but it was instinct. If I saw the keeper off his line, I would try and lob them and chip them. But like you say, the one against Bradford, I'll never forget, there was two players slid in front of us, and I just put it into the roof of the net. I remember one against Sheffield United for Sunderland. It sounds really cocky and arrogant, but I used to enjoy seeing players slide past you and just go like, send them for a bacon and egg pie, or a bacon and egg roll, sorry. And then you'd lift it over the top of them. So it was it was a cocky, arrogant thing. But I think that comes back to when I used to play backstreet football and also go to the school field. And we used to play a game called World Cup Willies. There was 10 of us or 12 of us or 20 of us. And if you had to score to get through to the next round. So one moment you're taking on 20 players. And, it was them days. I think it's why the Brazilians have so much flair, because it's their culture, it's their lifestyle, it's beach, it's five-a-side courts all over the country. I love going to Rio and seeing the beaches just full of people playing football, whether it was male, female, you name it was out there. It just becomes another limb. And I'm very grateful for where I was brought up, because every day it was me and the boys playing street soccer, or going to the local school field, and that was my life from 3 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night.
It's going back to your point about Chris Waddle too and Eddie Gray, the entertainers, and you are one of them. If you soak up that influence, you'll do it. And like you say, about it doesn't sound cocky or arrogant. If you can hold as somebody dives in, and all you can hear as you score, as you're lipping over this bastard, as they fly past you, it's the best thing ever. I have to take you to the European adventure, because clearly at the stage of the season where I think you go unbeaten and it's mainly wins in about 14, you go up the top of the Premier League. But Leeds really hadn't been a European force since they were cheated out of and cheated is the word, out of the European Cup final against Bayern Munich in 1975, when subsequently the referee's proven to have been bent. There's an absolute stick-on goal by Lorimer, etc. Therefore, I imagine that when you beat Partizan away and you take a 3-1 lead home, it's only 1-0 in the second leg, but I imagine that there's a fervour, that there's get me tickets, have to win this one, a passion, and it's also, friendlies aside, it's your first two competitive European fixtures. Did Europe matter to you automatically? Had you grown up thinking that Europe and European football was important?
Do you know what it is? When I signed for Leeds, I'd forgot that they had actually made it the UEFA Cup, as it were, then. And it was a bit of a bonus when I realised that we had European ties to come for the first time in my career. I'd travelled overseas with the England under-21s and the 18s, but to be part of a senior team that were going into Europe, it was new to me. So I think that game against Partizan was behind closed doors. We played that in Holland. And it was a way to recall that there was different styles of football for me overseas from different teams. And I was kind of like, whoa, that was interesting, because you didn't normally see teams play with a back five. In the Premier League, correct us if I'm wrong, but it was normally up against two centre halves, and the full-backs were bombing on. That kind of sweeper system hadn't been. It was the first time I'd come up against three defenders that were tight and narrow, and they had a back five. They were tough to break down.
So you have to go figure on the hoof kind of thing.
Well, as a team, we'd done the analysis. You'd seen it, but I'm looking at the board and thinking, "Whoa, this is going to be new." So it was really good to see a different style of play from different cultures, different teams going into Europe. It was actually harder. I think we got a better result away than we did at home. But again, going to places and travelling over to Russia, we played a lot of teams in Russia. We'd had a great result against Roma. That was a tough place to go, by the way. Going to there when we played Roma, Aldair, Candela, Cafu, Montella, Del Vecchio, Totti. De Rossi, I'm playing against these people that I'd looked up to and just admired for so many years in international football. And you've got to up your game. It was an interesting atmosphere. But what I think the club, not only were the players learning in Europe as well, like it was my first taste of it, my first experience in Europe, the club were as well as a whole, because we didn't really take a security team with us. And the antics that went on in Russia from the opposition, I remember getting room service at 11 o'clock at night, which I never ordered. There's a knock on the door. I remember the fire alarms going off at 12 o'clock on our floor, and then room service again at 2. So, all these, it was interesting. The club were learning as well what to go through in the antics that were going on. So I think the following year in the Champions League, it was that we were a lot better prepared because we had our own security team that came with us. We had our own floors and landings. So there's a lot of things the club were learning as we went as well. And like you say, it was great to play against these teams that I had admired as a kid. But you realise that, you belong there now. So you're up against them and you're working out all the different tactics and how you had the home and a leg. You might play different to what we did at home as we did in the away leg when you're just trying to get a result away to bring them back home. So again, just the joys of the learning education of football and how you've got to embrace it. And I must have just been a very quick learner.
Do you remember well the Roma ties? Because it strikes me, and I could be wrong, that the Leeds players who'd carried over from the season before owed them one, because Roma had knocked them out the year before. I know Newcastle was more your dad's heart than necessarily yours, because Spurs had won your heart, but they'd knocked Newcastle at 1-0 Totti in the previous round. And you named them, but Nakata was playing, Candela was a World Cup winner, Aldair, Antonioli had incredible saves in the first leg, Tomasi was top class, Montella, Totti, Del Vecchio, and Capello going absolutely mental in both legs. And if I'm not wrong, I think you must have gone into that with not just the lure of qualification as a big thing, or playing in the Olympic Stadium as a big thing. There was a lot riding on it for those who'd been beaten the year before, for you and your dad. Your dad must have been aching for you to put Roma right. And there was a bit of violence in the first leg. Antonio Carlos elbows Harry Kewell full in the face in Rome and gets clean away with it, and that's a debt that gets settled in the second leg. It was one huge soap opera, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and you could feel that atmosphere. The lads were all up for it, and like you said, until I heard the story why in the pre-team talk that was given, this is one we owe them. But they were a very physical and nasty team. It was the kind of Aldair that I played against, a Brazilian, very, very clever. Every time the ball was at the other end of the field, he would be pulling me hair, be kicking us in the shins. He'd give us a nice gobby in the back of the head as well, spat in the back of my head, everything he could to put us off my game. And it was kind of like, if you go under here, young man, and you let him get the better of you, then you're going to crumble. He's putting you off your game. And I'll just never forget, just when the ball was at the other end of the field, I gave him a right good bloody knuckle punch in the mid-drift when I turned around. And, it was on for young and old, as I called it, because they were a very experienced team, but we gave them a hell of a run for their money and knocked them out, and there was no more satisfaction.
Then can I ask you a question that intrigues me? Because you try as a broadcaster, as a journalist, you'll do the same, but I do, never having played the game at your level, not to be hypocritical. So I admit, and we had Michael Carrick saying that he misses the pure aggression and the digs and the wild tackles and the tunnel behaviour of Manchester United Arsenal. And, I'm talking to a man who's been put out of the absolute elite level of your career at Besiktas by, a problem, a tackle. Protecting footballers like you is a big deal. But that one-on-one you've had with Aldair that you remember to this day that helps forge you as a man, VAR would have had both of you off there. Now, he's done the wrong thing. Anybody who talks about spitting on the pitch, it's automatically red. But you've been able to get one back. You've been able to do something that, in all honesty, I miss in our game. But VAR, which I like in general, has taken away a little bit of, all right, me and you, out of the game, and I think there's a little bit of a loss there.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why it's been interesting living in Australia, because what you see, and there's a game over here, AFL, the Aussie Rules football, that's still allowed to go on at other ends of the field, you know what I mean? They'll still have that old little nargy-bargy, they'll have a little bit of a dig, and I enjoy going to watch that at a live stadium rather than the TV, because you see all these little I call it winning the battle, and you can win the battle in two different ways. You can win the battle by playing the game better than them, or you can win the battle by being nasty and not letting them get the better of you, whether it's going to be winning the header, giving them a bit of grief in the sideline. So I totally agree. That side of the game has gone. There's still some crafty stuff goes on inside, at the other end of the field, penalty areas, but there's too many cameras to actually get away with it these days. So I agree solely with what you're saying, because there's a lot of things I remember learning as a player from playing against people like Aldair, Martin Keown and Tony Adams, who were the masters at it. Absolute masters. And I'll never take that away. But back in the, with the VAR, I think there's a lot of things them players couldn't have got away with.
There's a lot of players now don't have to hide, because I think, comparing, Dennis didn't have to play up against Keown all that often, but Dennis was not scared, like you're talking about if he's buying his real estate, he bought some of it with his elbows. And he would leave one on you, say, listen, if you're coming after me, you're going to get it right back, which was terrific. But there was a lot of, there's no question, a lot of players would hide, not just hide from a one-on-one with Keown, but wouldn't show for the ball in the way that we all think you did. You always showed, because it's not bravery, isn't just like, I bring on your physicality. It's like, I'm going to put myself in a position where I know that I'm going to get hit in full and I'm going to hit and hit. So VAR has hidden a lot of footballers who weren't that brave in both senses of the word.
I agree. And Peter Reid was, like I say, he was a great one for me. He says, don't be scared of getting kicked. He said, if they're going to come and kick you, he said, get yourself half cocked, ready to jump. And he said, you can get out of the way, because he said, what I'm wanting you to do, you'll suck that defender in. They're going to try and smash you. They'll get a yellow card, and then you're going to win the game for us, because they'll either get sent off or they can't touch you after that. So he used to call it riding the tackle. So it was funny, when I left Sunderland and I played for Leeds, they had a lad called Paul Butler, centre-half. And I knew what the team talk was in the dressing room at Sunderland. Peter Reid was saying, Butts, you go through him early doors, try and do him and get him off the field. He'll stay down. So I remember just sucking the tackling from Paul Butler. Sure enough, he came in, he went to kick us. I've just jumped and ridden the tackle. I've gone down and milked it a little bit. And sure enough, Butts has got the yellow card. I've jumped up and I've gone to him and said, the gaffer told you to do his head, didn't he? He said, yeah. He said, aye. He said, but now you've got me in my pocket, haven't you? I said, aye, good on you. So you can read what's going to happen at times.
There's no way. I don't know if you want to stop at Slavia Prague, and I also don't know how long you want to stop on Galatasaray, but you've categorised this European run as great for experience, learning about different styles of football. It also helped the club be ready for what was a glorious and remarkable, painful for you, second season in Europe in the Champions League. But, I can't. You've mentioned both Kevin and Chris by name. When you're a footballer with a club that's got a kind of family atmosphere, and I presume that often fans travelled on the club flight, so I presume that these people were, at least if you didn't know them, people probably knew of them, and they're killed at a football match. Without going into the criminality of the behaviour of the fans in Istanbul, how do you deal with that kind of knowledge that this has happened in a city where you've got to play a game of football?
We didn't. Simple as that. We didn't. Some of the boys were very friendly with, Chris and Kev. They were big, passionate followers of the football club. And it was the night we found out. I'll never forget. We were at dinner, and we were told that Kevin Chris had been stabbed in Istanbul, and they died. And straight away, the captain Lucas Radebe was like, "Well, we don't play the game. Game's off. We're not playing." And everybody backed him and just said, "You're right. Well, we're not playing this game." It wasn't because we had a very young team. Do you know what I mean? So what's happened here? We've kind of gone, whoa, there's more to football. This is life. Do you know what I mean? Two guys have travelled. They've been murdered. It was wrong. And when I look back, if you have a look at the results after Leeds United against Galatasaray, we were flying at Christmas. We were top of the Premier League. I'll look back at that. The first game back, we give flowers out to the fans. We were playing Arsenal. We got... Many teams got destroyed off Arsenal, but we just weren't in the right headspace. Our results went downhill. There was more to it. The lads were shell-shocked, especially some of the boys that knew them very, very well. And I think what we regret now, especially I do, when I look back at that game, UEFA made us play the game. We had to play it. We were told we'd be kicked out of the competition. I think if we as a club should have taken a bigger stance on this as players and as staff, and said, well, kick us out of the competition then, and we will stand, we will not play this game, because I think that would have gone down and sent shockwaves around Europe and potentially got Galatasaray kicked out of the competition, because I know if that had happened the other way around in England, we would have been classed as hooligans and would have been kicked out of the competition anyway. It's one of my biggest regrets, I've got to be honest with you, when I look back, that we didn't make a stance, because it was shocking. It
was, and I didn't know you were going to say that, and I admire you for it. But I've got huge sympathy for, because at that stage, I guess you're 21, and I think to take a strong decision about, I'm going to get with the guys in the dressing room and stand up to the club, because eventually it's the club that's taking the decision that you have to play, to absent yourself. If you, let's say you felt absolutely steadfast in your own conviction that day and said, okay, well, the club can play, I'm not playing. Certainly, your point was the club should have taken it, and everybody should have stood together with people that maybe felt part of a family.
Every player at that dinner table took the stance and said the game's off. I'll never forget. We all we're not playing the game. It's off. And then even going to the stadium the following day, we had an armoured truck follow us with a water cannon. You know, you get the cutthroat gestures off the fans. It was a very intimidating place. Coins were getting thrown in the park at Harry Kewell, who was collecting the money and putting his socks and things. It was, you know, that didn't scare us after that. The atmosphere, it was horrible, intimidating, because all of our minds were just on what you know, we've got to play the game. This is so wrong, but let's go and try and get a result done and get it for these two lads. And sadly, we couldn't, because the return leg, like I say, we were just shattered and obliterated, because there was a lot of press around it. There was media. There was talk that the fans were going to, you know, try and get revenge at home, and there was just too much involved, Graham. It didn't sit well. So looking back, it's very good in hindsight when you look back. But I think we could have done a lot more as a club and as players.
I appreciate what you've said, and I think it's a dilemma each of us would need to look at and wonder how strong we would be. It's good to know that everybody in the playing side wanted not to play. Hard to stand up for your principles if the people that pay your wages said this is what you must do. But maybe it's just a moment to remember that these two young men that supported Leeds, one of whom was a family man, I think, were murdered and people were sent to jail. When you set yourself up for your second season at Leeds, can you remember thinking, that's it, I've made it, I'm here, summer's easy, no problem, completely different to 12 months ago? Or did you have to reset in any way and think, all right, I'm going to have to up my game? How does Michael Bridges go into that second season at Leeds?
Obviously, after that first season, getting the 21 goals in Premier League in Europe, it was a massive wake-up call and a reality check. And I thought, you know what it is? You should look how hard you worked last year in pre-season to get where you're going to be. You know, you've got a battle on your hands again. You've got to get back to them levels. And then, lo and behold, we signed a guy called Mark Viduka, an Australian. And I saw this lad turn up at the training ground. And I'll tell you what, if there's any time you need a reality check to see you're going to have to work as hard, if not harder, to get a position and keep your place and play up front with this lad, it was Mark Viduka. He was just outstanding. I think he's the only player I've seen in my career. We have a game called Sheva. So, you know, all the lads are on the outside. The two people go in the middle. You lose the ball, you go in the middle. I never saw Mark Viduka go in the middle, because he never gave the bloody ball away. And if he did, he'd make an excuse and want to fight everybody else to say, no, I'm not going in. But he was that bloody good, and you weren't going to mess with a big man. So he was the catalyst for me to say, let's get this on. And I think that was a tough decision for O'Leary at first, because there was a lot of games that was me, Smith and Viduka played together, and I dropped in behind the two of them. And I wasn't playing as well as I would have liked. I was finding it hard to run in behind, because I'm playing in a different position, and I found it very, very tough. But it was obviously due to the competition that had come along, and I was just starting to find my feet. And then obviously the injury came against Besiktas, which wasn't pretty. It was a career-threatening injury, but that I'd got myself back to a point in that season because of Mark Viduka signing and because of the hard work yet again, because I knew I had to replicate what I'd done the year before. So it was I was up for the fight, and we were all in it together as a team. And then, playing so many Champions League matches against Barcelona's and things in the group stages, and really feeling like you'd belonged and in a place to becoming a fan for the rest of the season, because I was on crutches, I was in a cast. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. But it made us refocus my goals and what I had to do to get back to playing again. And I could have quite easily given up, Graham, because I was offered an insurance claim and to say that I'd retire from football and I'd quit the game. And thankfully, I didn't take that money, because Dave Hancock, the physio at the time, who was, I owe him absolutely everything. He saved my career. He said, "Don't take the money, Michael." He said, "You can't take the insurance claim." He said, "Because if you touch a ball and take any payment in the future, you've got that chance to play again. Believe in us." And I did. I stuck by him. I literally might have slept at his house for the amount of sessions that I put in with him. And like I say, when I look back, 14 months of hard work, you go to dark places, you bounce back. Some days are high, some days are low. It was a tough yakka, but it makes you want something that you love. And I think I might have taken it for granted, the football career. And when somebody takes away from you, I'll tell you what, you'll do anything to get it back.
We've got socios, Michael, who are our members, our supporters, who've been with us since we began this podcast and helped us crowdfund. One of them is Gustavo Bagatini. And Gustavo asked an interesting question. It's hypothetical, but I guess you will have considered it. Gustavo says, "Do you think that the changes in rehabilitation and technology that are available today would have lessened the impact that injury specifically had on your career if these techniques, if this technology had been available after the Besiktas injury?"
I would like to think so, the way it's come on, but I'll never forget the surgeon's words when he looked at the MRI scan. He realised the damage that I'd done. He said he'd only ever seen it in a motorbike accident. That's how much damage I'd done. I'd snapped 3 ligaments. It wasn't the bones that I'd snapped it was the problem. It was the actual ligaments around the ankle. And for anybody that understands in a medical term, I'd snapped the retinaculum sheath, which holds in your big toe mechanism. And that snapped, so my big toe was paralysed. I'd lost the ability to walk or even feel the ankle. And what had happened, I'd had an internal bleed as well, which was pretty... That started about 4 days after Besiktas had flown back. And I was very lucky that I phoned the physio, Dave Hancock, and said, "Mate, my leg up to my knee has literally gone black." And he said, "We've got to get you in ASAP to get it operated on." So, I think possibly we did everything in our power back then. Maybe we could have found the injury a little bit sooner with the new technology. But I still think, I'll never forget, it still echoes in my head what the surgeon said. A motorbike accident is what I've seen this in. He said, "You'll never play again." So I would like to think so, because of the technology and the stuff available, but it was horrendous. I've still got the video of the operation, but I can't watch it. They did a case study on the operation. They wanted to use it as an example and to use it to show people, other surgeons and other physios around the world. They used my ankle with Dave Hancock and the surgeon to help educate other people that would never see this sports injury before.
Well, kudos to the surgeon, Dave Hancock, because over your career you've gone on to play, well over 350 professional games. I guess without dwelling on it, the reason that we wanted to speak to you is what we expected when we saw your vision and your interpretation of the game and your finishing was probably trophies and England caps. And although, listen, as a Scot, and you abandoned us, and Ricky Sprague, I wasn't going to bring it up, but, it's got to be put in there. You could have been a Scot. You could have been played for the mighty Scot. You could still be playing for them the way we're going at the moment, eh? In all honesty. That's true, right?
It was interesting because we never knew where the background in Scotland had come from. And until I went into the manager's office, Peter Reid's office, and I was playing for the youth team in the reserves. And I walked down to the office. I was summoned into Reid's office. And I thought, oh shit, what have I done? I'm going to get wrong here. So lo and behold, I walks in, knocks on the door, he lets us in, and Rick Sprague just sat there with him and Peter Reid, and they both had a bit of paper with them. And Peter Reid said to Rick, "You go first." And Rick says, "Well, here you go, Michael. Here's a letter from the Scottish FA saying, would you like to represent Scotland in the European Championships?" And Peter Reid said, "And I'll just stop you there." He said, "Because I've got a letter here from the English FA saying, would you like to represent them in the game in 4 nights' time? And they're playing against Scotland." And I was like, what? I was like, where's this come from? I didn't even know I had Scottish history or heritage. So, I didn't even have time to think about it, because Peter Reid literally said, or Rick Spurgeon said to me, if you don't play for Scotland, you'll never play for the youth team ever again. And the gaffer really said, and if you don't take my bit of paper, you'll never play for this football club ever again. I quickly grabbed the English FA letter and headed off to the England camp and played against Scotland. So there you go. Blame Peter Reid.
Easy choice, and Peter Reid's quite a persuasive guy. But I will point out to you, you didn't need a relative. You'd visited Berwick, and Berwick play in the Scottish League. So that's enough. That's enough. You qualified for us immediately. You went and played against Celtic Rangers in Berwick. Our sponsors, our lovely sponsors, Bet365, asked us this question, that when you scored the 19 domestic goals in that 99-2000 season, it was the same amount of goals as Andy Cole. You outscored Thierry Henry and Paolo Di Canio. Once you'd done that, how did it feel to be one of the most clinical strikers in England?
Very, very surreal and very humbling to think that I'd looked up to them players the season before. I was in the Championship with Sunderland and I was looking up to them and just thinking, what can I take out of their game to put into my game? And just to see my name up there, like you say, I don't know, it was just very humbling. And It's still, to this day, I still can't even describe it because it still doesn't sink in. I still look at that team, that lineup, what you're on about with the top goal scorers. There's only one thing that I admire it so much, but there's only one thing that pisses me off. The guy that I left Sunderland because I couldn't get a game ahead of, Kev Phillips, he won it that year. So he still had one over on us because he was absolutely unbelievable. So we had a laugh about that. I said, I've gone to get away from you, but I still can't get the golden boot because you bloody won it as well. I think Shearer got second that year.
You made us promise, Kevin, that when he was on here, we would always refer to him as Kevin Golden Boot Phillips. So you don't have to, but we have to by contract.
I think if you look back over time, Niall Quinn had a massive impact on both of our careers because Quinny mentored me. I didn't get to play with Quinny as much as I would have liked because it was me and Danny Diccio as well, again, the little and large. But the way Niall Quinn mentored me as a kid, to room with a 19-year-old, a 17, 18-year-old lad when you're a senior pro and to take us under his wing and look after us. I was on £40 a week. And this guy, Quinny, would let us order room service. He would look after us. He would give us a bonus of 20 quid if I'd look after his car at the training ground or wash it for him. Just things like that. You'll never forget how he mentored me and developed me and would take us after training, would go and do some shooting practices together. My heading ability was shocking. So I learned so much off Quinny, how to time your runs, how to get leverage and get up because he was one of the best in the business at it. And then again, looking from when me and Kev, we challenge each other every day with finishing on the floor. But I think like my admiration for Kev's finishing is up here at the top end. But the admiration for Quinny, what he passed on to both of us, can't go and recognise. He was just a marvellous man and a marvellous footballer.
Being a smart man, you'll have known, having done my research, this question was coming. Because I've heard a lot of football prank stories. And the single most evil, devastating thing I've ever heard in my life, you told, and in fact you did, and it concerns a Porsche Cayenne. Are you in the mood to explain your Machiavellian brilliance at paying people back?
I'm quite happy because if you mess with fire, you're going to get burned sooner or later, Graham. That's my motto in life. And I was reading the Gaza autobiography, which is why I got this little gem of a prank in my locker, for a rainy day. I was known at every football club I was at as the worst dressed man. I just would grab what was in the cupboard, put it on, and whether I used to get stick. I don't give a crap. Hence why I'm in Australia. You can wear boardies, thongs and a T-shirt and nobody cares. So it's the best part about it was I'd been shopping down in London. My wife had taken us down there and she says, listen, I'm going to get you some decent clothes. I'm sick of people taking the piss out of you. So we'd been to a place called, I'll never forget, the place called The Library. I've got my gear and I got back up to the airport and I realised that I couldn't go home in time. I'm late for training. So I've taken the clothes with us in my bags to the training ground. Now, I know what the general pranks are. If it's your birthday, you get your gear cut up that you're wearing, generally. Or if you come with your shopping bags, you're going to get the gear that you're wearing chopped up as well. So I was ready for this. I thought, right, I've got my shopping bags here. No problems. The gear's going to get cut up. So lo and behold, I comes in after training. I went to put my jumper on. As I put my jumper on, the sleeve's fallen off, and I thought, yeah, I've been done here. So I went to put the jeans on. Sure enough, the jeans, as you put it through, I've ripped the bottoms off them. They're cut to shreds. And the lads had cut Umbro diamond figures out because I was sponsored by Umbro at the time, along with, and they'd put the old diamonds in right the way down the front of the jeans. So it was funny. I get it. There was a couple of lads left in the dressing room. Andy O'Brien was one of them, and it was the other lad, Aaron Hughes was the other lad. So they were back at training. Everybody else has left, and as I went to get me shopping in the clothes that were in my bag to put on, because I'm having a laugh that my gear's being cut up, leather jacket cut to shreds, jeans cut to shreds, jumpers and shirts cut to shreds. Now, I'm not, I've got quite a lot of gear in there, and I'm going, this is borderline. I'm not having this. So straight away, if you ever need to go into the trenches or into court, never take Andy O'Brien with you because he will tell everything. Thankfully, OB was in the... he looks like Screech Off Saved by the Bell. If any of people, don't know who OB is, just get a picture of Screech Off Saved by the Bell and Andy O'Brien. The nose and the haircut, fantastic, great lad. I turned around to him, I said, OB, I said, who's done this? And he looked all over the dressing room walls, and I said, give us eye contact. Who's done it? Because he can't lie, bless him. It's unbelievable. It's a great trait to have. And he went, Kieran's done you. I went, right, that'll do me, thank you. So, being from the northeast, living in North Shields, where we've got the fish markets, there was a lad called Anthony Ishimore who used to play at Newcastle School of Excellence with us. He grew up there. He never got the chance to make it professionally. And Ishi had a fish and chip shop. So I went down to see Ishi, my mate, and I said, have you got any bags of offal? Now, offal is just all the off bits of the fish that they bag up, and it absolutely stinks. So I've taken it one level further than Gaza. I'm not going for the fish. I'm going the full hog here. So Ishi said, what do you want 3 bags of offal for? I said, yeah, I don't know. I'll not tell you now, but you'll probably read about it. You'll definitely read about it in the press or something because there's going to be hell on. So I've driven to my mother's house and I've got this bag of offal. It's got to stay in the house overnight. So I've put it out the back of the house because it's honking. So the next day, gets in the car, drives to the training ground. I can remember holding the bags of offal out the car window because I couldn't have it in the car. I was nearly vomiting. So I get to the training ground. Anyway, Davey and all the boys, the security men were there. They're like, what are you going to do, lad? I said, listen, when Kieran's car pulls up today, because we used to hand the keys to Davey, the security man, and he would park the cars for us or wash them. I said, Davey, when he comes in, I said, I'm going to do Kieran's car with these offal. He's cut me gear up. He went, oh, brilliant. He said, couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll even put the security cameras on his car so we can video it when he opens the car door. Brilliant. So, it's nice when you know all the lads from the area and whatnot, they're on your side. So, because I don't deal with arrogance very well. So this was, me and Kieran have still got a few issues. I like to be in that humble space, and I thought I've got to rein him in here. So it was a glorious day. He was late for training again. So he's revving his Porsche Cayenne like you wouldn't believe. So Davey comes running in. He says, Bridgie, I've got his keys, lad. So I'll never forget. I could feel the heat on the engine coming through. So I've popped the bonnet. And as I poured it on, it was like a barbecue. It started fizzling. So me and Davey are laughing our heads off. We're going, this is brilliant. So I did the gazzer. I lifted up the spare tyre. I put one in his boot. The smell, man, we're gagging. I've put the tyre back in, shut it all down. The biggest mistake that I made in the Porsche Cayenne, it had like a suede interior. So the glove box was cream with a suede. And as I took his CDs out. He had Celine Dion CDs and that in there. So I took them out and I poured a bag of offal into the glove box. And I shut the glove box. And all of a sudden, it was like a sponge. It had absorbed all the bloody blood and it was started seeping across the dashboard. And I'm thinking, I think I might have gone one step too far here. So anyway, Kieran never admitted to cut me gear up, by the way, so he'd never owned up to it. So long story short, Friday afternoon, the team bus pulls up. He doesn't even go back to his car. So we go away for the away game. It's had 48 hours to fester in the heat. Davey, the security man, sent us a screenshot from the security camera of a white cat sitting at the back of Kieran's car, which for me is just absolutely priceless. The cat's gagging for the fish. So as we came back, I've quickly got off in my car and thought, I'm not hanging around here. And the security footage, you see Kieran open the door and the smell must hit him. And then my phone goes off. Well, it was on for young and old. I denied it to the hilt until I left the club. And I said, I just remember saying, you mess with fire, you got burnt. And he never touched us ever again, mate. So it was absolutely bloody brilliant. And Lord, you know what was even funnier? He was in the Celebrity Jungle in the UK recently, I believe. You would have had him. He went into Celebrity Jungle, Kieran. And what they do, they have it in Brisbane in Australia. And I knew a couple of the people that were on the set, and I said, listen, you've got to do us a favour. I said, if there's any chance I can purchase and chuck in a few extra snakes, I'm your man.
It's like The Godfather. If a bag of offal has turned up in the Gold Coast outside room 314, Mr. Dyer, it's a bag of offal for you. Oh, that's...
Yeah, Graham, I'll quickly give you one more. I went down to sign for Bristol City. There was a guy there called Matty Haywood, big centre-half. Came from Swindon. And I got this car delivered. I went to put my car in the garage. And I give him an Audi A4. And they give us an Audi A8 to drive around for the day. So I've got this big bloody, smashing car from the garage. I get to the training ground, and what I did, the lads had obviously got the keys, and they filled the air vents with flour and talcum powder. So when I turned turned the air conditioning unit on high, so when I turned the ignition on, I got talcum powdered and floured, and I've got to take this car back to the garage. So I'm thinking I've got to pay the cleaning bill. So anyway, like I say, you mess with fire, you get burnt. The following day, I found the Yellow Pages, and I found this shop around the corner from the training ground called Webs and Legs Pet Shop. I bought as many crickets and grasshoppers and stick insects and flies as you possibly could imagine in these containers. And the guy in the shop said to us, he said, have you got any pets like lizards and things? I says, no. I said, I've just wanted to use this as a prank. He said, what? I said, I'm going to fill somebody's car with it. So I got Matty Haywood's keys. I emptied all these animals inside. It was like a moving aquarium inside his car, mate. And he left it at the training ground for 3 days because I sent him a message saying, watch out for the anaconda. 2 weeks later, there was still cricket noises. He couldn't find all the crickets. I was still making that cricket noise in his car, mate. It was the funniest thing ever.
That's two of the all-time greatest stories that have ever been told. Not have been told on this podcast, that have ever been told. I'm going to let you go now with what I hope will be an agreement that I think the country, again, apart from the parts of the country that just don't like Leeds, is excited that a big force has been unleashed on the Premier League again. And they're going to be Bambies. They're going to be a bit raw. It's a big jump up. You don't win Premier League security with your history. But are you excited, as somebody who talked about entertainers, are you excited with the brand of football that Bielsa has brought? Bielsa's doing it to win. He's not doing it to make everybody happy and to show football its most beautiful. It's there to win. But are you enamoured of it?
I don't think he knows any other way. The high press, when he did it with Chile, they were magnificent to watch. Playing out from the back, getting getting all the rotations, getting the movement, getting the players. And I absolutely love it. I think it's a fantastic brand of football. I think it's the way, when I look at Bayern Munich playing in the Champions League semi-final against Leipzig, Tuchel had his team pressing so high and basically taught, Nagelman and Leipzig a lesson on how you can't, if you're going to play out at all costs, you better get it right. And what I've really enjoyed watching Bielsa and speaking to a couple of players. I think Liam Cooper, for me, is the one. He was an apprentice at Hull City when I was at Hull. A lovely kid. He defended. He was strong. He could head a ball. His positioning was decent, but playing out from the back, give him a ball at his feet. Liam couldn't have been a footballer. No, this is like a ball player. He knows that. He recognises that. Now, to see a man in Bielsa invest him and his staff and turn this lad into a captain, a leader, and a player now that can play out from the back, he doesn't feel pressure, he's comfortable. That, for me, knowing where Liam was at when I was with him as an apprentice, and nobody had invested that kind of time and quality into him, that speaks volumes to me. He sees players for a few weeks and he changed them positions. He's got them and you think, why is he putting them in there? And then all of a sudden you've got a player in a position. I think he's an absolute genius. Yeah, he might be called loco for his mad, but what he's got a team. I think he showed by his analysis that he did when he was happy to open that up to the press. He's got his methods. And I think that I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes in the Premier League, because when they played Arsenal in the FA Cup, I feel like they taught them a lesson. They give them a right run for their money. Missed opportunities, missed chances are going to cost you against top clubs. Arsenal took their chances, but that's going to be very interesting to watch and catch. It's going to catch a lot of teams out because his style is absolutely brilliant. I love it.
Given your description of what Liam was and what he is now under Bielsa, that suggests to me that if academies, schools all around the country, UK, were teaching in this manner, you can begin players who aren't naturally confident ball players in terms of seeing the pass quickly or technically their first touch or the positioning or the body shape. You can actually inculcate that, and it's easier to teach at 8, 9, 10, 12 than it was for Bielsa to teach Liam. That you've given a ray of hope.
But Graham, what I will come back to you with that, the curriculum over here in Australia, they went for the Dutch curriculum, and it was play out at all costs at junior levels. There was no long balls, there was no kicking, no long passes. It's kind of had an adverse effect because what's been happening, a lot of the coaches have just been drilling it into them to say you've got to do it at all cost. Now, the goalkeeper gives it to the centre-half, a young centre-half, say 8 or 9 years of age. You've got to learn your trade, but you're going to make mistakes. So that kid loses the ball, whether it's male or female, on the edge of the area, opposition win it, score a goal against them. Okay? Second time it happens, you get the ball to your feet, you lose the ball again, they score a goal. That player then becomes and feels absolutely terrible because they've cost their team, they're playing out at all costs. That's the way the coach wants them to play because they've been told by the FFA curriculum that we have over here that this is how all junior games must be played. We've found that there's a lot of kids have been leaving the game because they haven't wanted that kind of pressure, or nobody wants to play in that position because we're just in that situation at the moment now where we're trying to find a solution to that and allow like a different style of play and how we educate them rather than making them concede goals that, like give the ball away on the edge of their own area, which is going to cost them, which we saw Bayern Munich do to Leipzig. So it happens in the senior game, but it's just very hard for the juniors to take that on board and see it as a learning curve with the development that it is. We're just trying to manufacture that. So, but yes, it can be done, but there's got to be some kind of a lot more analysis and a lot more engagements and collaboration between the coaches over here and, like you see in the UK as well, the way they're wanting to try and do something, because that's the way the game should be played. But it's very tough to try and educate kids when they might be getting beat 10-0 and they've conceded 10 goals doing that manner.
It is about pressure, and it's a good explanation. Just finally, I believe that you're fully integrated back as an ambassador for Leeds, and that Leeds have begun to reach out to... I mean, they lost two fantastic legends during the COVID crisis, and I particularly... Norman Hunter was a player I watched and admired and liked listening to as well. And if I'm not wrong, he was from your neck of the woods and all. It's important that Leeds recognise the tradition and welcome people like you and people from your era back again, I think. Yeah,
I can't reiterate that enough and give a massive shout out to the vision that the club had when Andre came in. Victor also doing the recruitment, Paul Bell came on, Angus Kinnear. When you've been at that club and you've played for Leeds United and you've seen what the fans do on them European nights, nothing will ever erase that from my memory or my heart. So Leeds have got a massive part there because we had... I don't like using the word success because we didn't win anything in my era, so I'll never say we were a successful team. We were a quality team with a quality culture with quality fans. And you'll never forget that. So, it felt horrendous when you would see what went on after we had been together in the decline of Leeds, going through several managers, several owners, turmoil. It was hard to swallow because you weren't invited back, you weren't welcomed back. It felt like we played a major part in the decline of the club when we didn't. We didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. So that was hard. And finally, I remember speaking to Ian Hart and Gary Kelly, and they were saying, "Oh, you know, when you're back next, you should get in touch with the club because we're being invited back as ambassadors. The whole culture's changed again. They want us to do the boxes and do the hot match day hospitality and things." So that was refreshing to hear. I did a Premier League tour with 20 Australian fans. I took them over to watch Premier League games, and I said there was 4 of them were Leeds fans. I said, "Listen, at the end of the trip, stay back with me. I'll drive you up, and we'll go and have a look round Elland Road on my way back to Newcastle, the North East." And they'll never forget the experience, and I'll never forget it because Paul Bell greeted us there. He said, "You're welcome. Come and have a look at the Legends Lounge that we've developed. This is where the money's." Now I'm going back 3 and a bit years now. So this was at the infancy stage. They'd invested the money in the stadium, which needed it. They'd done the corporate boxes up. They'd done the Legends Lounges up. They'd done the other things because they wanted the sponsors on match days to reconnect and reinvest in the football club. That's where they saw that side of it. And they were talking about, potentially getting the players the following year and investing in some of the players. And then the year after, they had a vision and a plan to get somebody. They never said who. Obviously, it was Bielsa and his team. And so they had a vision, they had a plan, and I was just blown away. I said, "You know what it is? You've really made me re-engage and give me a lot more hope for this football club because we haven't been welcomed back. It's been in disarray. You guys have got a vision. You've got a plan. You've made me feel welcome. You've never even met my guests here, and you've just made their whole entire year." And they couldn't believe the access that we had. So that for me was absolutely huge, and I could see where they were going to go. And then the tour of Australia last year, when they did the Down Under tour against Manchester United, I'd seen the football style change as well under Bielsa, no end. In the way he worked at training with his staff, how they use the iPads, because not many of them speak English, the engagement. It was just absolutely brilliant, Graham. So it's no surprise to see where they are because it's like business. If you've got a vision, you've got a plan, and you know where you want to get to and you know how to get there. It's hard work. It's a successful industry now, so they've achieved their goals, and they're going to have to reset them now. And I just hope that to be an ambassador for the club and lead the Australian tour, to know that you've been remembered is just absolutely brilliant. It'll be a part of my heart forever.
Well, a nice shout out for Victor Horta, Viva España, Fútbol Español. That's part of the reason that we were so keen and still so thrilled to have you on here, because you do represent something for us. Your heart's with Spurs. Enjoy All or Nothing when it comes out. We've enjoyed listening to you. We knew in advance that your involvement with football, your brain, your articulacy matched the football that we thrilled to. It's been a really educational big interview. Been hugely enjoyable. Long may analysing on TV and coaching in Australia last, but I also wish you one day an opportunity to show your skills, Championship, Premier League, back in England, maybe with Spurs, maybe with Leeds. Fingers crossed for that. But for the meantime, Michael Bridges, this has been an awfully good big interview. Thank you for your kindness and your generosity.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And, it's nice to be remembered. I'll never forget a quote from Niall Quinn. Here's one for you. I spoke about him being a mentor. He told me one thing when I didn't sign 10 people's autographs outside the stadium. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. So there you go. Let that stay with you. Stay safe, everybody that's listening. And obviously, COVID's been a tough time. I wish everybody all the best. Stay safe and good luck in the future. Thank you.